BARK Radio.
What's good, everybody? It's Robo from All Bark back in another video, and today I'm bringing my college football Week 10 picks. We are right in the middle of the best stretch of the year with college football games starting on Tuesday and lasting all week long. This week starting on Tuesday, again, one final time in the Conference USA and Sun Belt before action. Before we get into these games, let's go ahead and recap the Week 9 results on the channel. Week 9 was a good one for the picks straight up, but not so much against the spread. I went 39-14 straight up and had a positive record in the close spread matchups, but went just 25-28 against the spread thanks to a horrendous weekday slate and a rough stretch of picks at noon. There were several backdoor covers that hurt me this week and some complete no-shows I was not expecting. But that's college football for you, and I can't really complain as it goes both ways. So hopefully I can get back on track this week looking at the slate. I like quite a bit of my picks, so with that said, let's try to get back to winning and dive into Week 10, starting with those Tuesday matchups. UTEP at Kennesaw State kicks off Week 10 on Tuesday night. Kennesaw State's playing some great football right now. They look like they can run the table potentially in the Conference USA, and UTEP looks the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Even with the spread near double digits, there's no way I'd like UTEP in this spot. They've looked bad all season long, and the most impressive win was against Sam Houston, who's even worse. Kennesaw State should be motivated at home and has some guys playing incredible football right now in both Amari Odom and Dexter Williams at quarterback. So I'm going to take them at home by 2 scores, 34-20. James Madison is at Texas State this week. Texas State is not playing good football right now, especially defensively, giving up 120 points in the last 3 games, and has lost multiple games at home this season to teams worse than James Madison. Road games can always be tough, but James Madison has been consistently good this season. The only loss is at Louisville by 14. Even in the games where the offense did not come into play, they still won without much of a sweat thanks to the great defense. I think this team should be more than motivated with Sun Belt title chances on the line each week now, so I'm going to take them on the road this week, 38-28. On Wednesday, we've got Jacksonville State at Middle Tennessee State. You never know with weekday road games, but this line is one I really like at first glance. Middle Tennessee State is just a terrible football team. It took an absolute miracle to cover last week against Delaware. I actually still can't believe I lost that pick, as Delaware pulled their starting quarterback up just 10 points with a quarter to go and blew several opportunities to put the game away late, including throwing a near pick 6 on the final drive, which led to that backdoor cover in the final seconds. Jacksonville State is not the same team as last year, but they found a way to pick up some big wins this year and have been competitive in nearly every game. And this is just a matchup I think they should not struggle with if they come ready, especially with that rushing attack, which has been unstoppable against a bad defense. I'll go 31-21. This next game is a classic example of Conference USA football being complete toss-ups. FIU 2 weeks ago absolutely dominated a decent Western Kentucky team on the road, and then last week came back home for Vice Night and got crushed by Kennesaw State. Kennesaw is the real deal, it looks like, but I think FIU could have been a lot more competitive in that game as they had over 500 yards of offense. This week they're back on the road against Missouri State, and I like this matchup a lot more for their defense. Kennesaw has some solid playmakers and 2 dual threat quarterbacks to expose that defense, and Missouri State just does not have that with Jacob Clark. He can throw the ball, but the playmaker gap and the rushing difference at quarterback is clear to me. They just struggled to beat a New Mexico State team who turned it over 5 times last week, so getting over 3 points here is solid enough for me to back FIU again. I'll go 27-24. Up first on Thursday, I'll start with Marshall at Coastal Carolina. This is a pretty tough game to pick for me. Preseason, I had both these teams ranked extremely low, expecting little to nothing from their seasons. And while both teams started the year off horrendously, Coastal has put together a few great offensive performances, and Marshall's offense has looked genuinely good 3 games in a row now. Since making Carlos Del Rio Wilson the starter, they put up 51 points in an OT loss to Louisiana, 48 points in a win against Old Dominion, and 40 points in a win over Texas State. He's playing lights out football right now, and this Coastal defense has given up a bunch of points in every game this season besides Louisiana Monroe and Charleston Southern. I don't have any faith in Marshall's defense either, but I do think they're the better team and hotter team in this matchup, so I'll take them on the road close, 33-30. The better Thursday game is Tulane at UTSA. UTSA can score some points, but they're a bit inconsistent, and they have not won a single big game this season yet. Tulane has great play in the trenches, which is a spot they should really control in this game. They defend well, they're coached well, and are absolutely still in the Group of 5 playoff race with wins over Duke and Northwestern, and their lone loss being just to Ole Miss. I trust Tulane's quarterback play more in this game, and obviously trust them to defend as they've done all season, even against quality Group of 5 offenses. So I really like getting Tulane at such a short spread, even on the road here. I'll go 35-27. Memphis bounced back from the ugly UAB loss with a massive home win over South Florida, and this week they'll go on the road to take on Rice. Rice is a near Service Academy's offense, as I've mentioned pretty much every week, and it makes their offense pretty hard to stop because they're so good at running the football this season. It's their bread and butter, and it's worked against everyone except UTSA, honestly. Memphis, coming off an absolutely massive win, puts them right back near the top of the Group of 5 playoff spot race. So this is a clear letdown spot going on the road the very next week to a team that can push you around a bit and run the football. I do not see Memphis losing this game, but I would not be surprised to see Rice hanging around Friday night. I'm going to go 34-24. North Carolina honestly could be coming off back-to-back wins. They fumbled away the game-winning touchdown at Cal 2 weeks ago, and this past week they probably should have pulled off the upset over Virginia, but again choked the game away. I'll take that as proof of real strides being made with this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They've held teams in check the past 2 weeks and have just excelled on that end. The Virginia result was definitely more shocking, but I like what I've seen lately from Gio Lopez, and I'm starting to really trust North Carolina to make stops to keep them in games. This Syracuse offense they're going up against just does not strike me as a very competitive unit with Ricky Collins at quarterback, and I know they can be scored on the other end. They looked a little better against Georgia Tech, but that game got ugly really fast, so I'm going to roll with UNC this week, 27-23. Sam Houston is one of, if not the worst team in the FBS this season. I have some pause for UMass, but they're definitely in that bottom group of teams. Improved it again last week, losing fairly uncompetitively to a 1-win UTEP team at home. This week they go on the road to Louisiana Tech, who besides one game where Blake Baker left with an injury has looked very competitive this season. Coming off of back-to-back losses now after dropping the Western Kentucky game in overtime, but that team is much better than the Sam Houston one, and Blake Baker is going to be even healthier this week, I would assume. This game should not have any reason to be any particularly close, as long as those 2 losses don't eject this team. It's still been a quality season for La Tech, and the goals are still on the table technically, so I'm going to take them at home big this week, 34-14. Penn State at Ohio State is this week, and this game has absolutely fallen off a cliff after the disaster that's been Penn State's football season lately. No Drew Aller, James Franklin fired, and a bad offense in general regardless, so I just don't see how Penn State scores in this game, honestly. I absolutely trust Penn State's defense to get some stops, maybe keep them in the game in the first half, but with a lack of offensive production against the best defense in the country on the road, there's going to be a time where the Buckeyes just take over and pull away, in my opinion, and when that offense gains momentum, they can step on the gas and go. So I like the Buckeyes in the shoe to take care of Penn State this week. 3 touchdowns is a perfect spot to me for a spread, though. I'm going to go with a 31-10 final. Vanderbilt at Texas is one of the best matchups of the week, and it's a tough one to pick right now with Arch Manning and concussion protocol. Troy transfer Matthew Caldwell may be getting the start and plays to him. He made a good throw last week in overtime to complete that comeback win, but that was Arch who led it the whole way. On the other end, I never want to fade Diego Pavia, but this Vanderbilt team really struggled to move the football against Missouri's defensive front, and Texas has a better defense to me regardless of last week's performance. I trust them at home to get stops in this game. Pavia has a lot of it factor, but he hasn't been great in SEC play. So it comes down to Texas's offense being able to perform, and seeing as their playoff hopes are on the line, I think they show up and make this a game go down to the wire. And in that scenario, I'd actually trust Diego Pavia a lot more than I trust Matthew Caldwell right now. So if Arch is out, give me Vanderbilt to survive and advance in Austin, 23-20. Number 10 Miami is on the road this week at SMU, who's coming off of a brutal road performance where they just lost to Wake Forest 13-12. Just an abysmal showing offensively, but I think we could chalk that up to looking ahead to this spot, hosting a top 10 team, and that Wake game was also sandwiched as they had just beaten Clemson on the road the week prior. I still believe SMU can compete with better teams in the ACC, and they should absolutely be up for this game. Miami is a very talented team, but as we saw in the Louisville game, Carson Beck can still fall apart, and his ball just does not have much zip. The quality DBs can make life hard on him, and I strongly believe in SMU's defense being able to make a few plays. The question is, how good does SMU's offense respond? I think it's good enough to compete, but Miami's defense will do enough to escape the win. I'll take Miami by 10, 31-21. Houston hosts West Virginia this week, coming off of a massive road win over Arizona State. They didn't have to deal with Jordan Tyson, which was absolutely huge, but it's still an incredible win regardless, especially considering how well the defense played. The defenses look good pretty much all year, and while this West Virginia offense put up a good amount of points last week, they just are not a super competitive team that Houston should struggle with. I do worry a bit about a hangover spot, but getting Houston under 2 touchdowns isn't too bad to me. I think they should take this game by at least that amount, as long as they play smart football. Wegman's just been balling as a dual threat quarterback this year, so I'll trust him at home to get it done again, 34-17. Illinois is back home taking on Rutgers this week, and this is definitely a game where they should win, but there's no doubt the season has not gone the way Illinois was hoping for. They've lost pretty much uncompetitively in their big games this season besides USC, and the defense just has not looked too great. They've given up 27 to Purdue and 42 to Washington last week, and Rutgers is a team that I know can score with all their playmakers. So this is going to have to be a game where that changes for Illinois, or they just simply dominate offensively. And I lean to that offense as being pretty much unstoppable against this awful Rutgers defense. But I just don't love this Illinois team enough to ride with them as a 2-touchdown spread at all. I'll take Illinois, but by just 10, 38-28. Clemson hosts Duke this week, coming off a bye week, which was much needed after losing at home to SMU the week prior. Cade Klubnik missing that game was absolutely huge, as the offense just did not look good at all, and SMU had so much confidence going into that game and took advantage. This week may be a tougher offense to stop for Clemson, but it looks like Klubnik will be back, and I do think that has a positive impact on the entire team as a whole. Not to mention the bye week in between. I love Darian Mensah though, and would not put the road upset past him at all. But at the same time, Clemson is still a super talented team who we saw really get things going prior to SMU, and I trust this defense to show up enough this week to give them a shot. So I'm going to roll the Clemson Tigers to bounce back at home, 28-24. Next is UCF at Baylor. Baylor's coming off another loss, this time to Cincinnati on the road, and UCF is off a bye after blowing out West Virginia. For this matchup, Baylor's defense is terrible, but I still trust that offense to be better than UCF's. Sawyer Robertson is one of the better quarterbacks in the country, and he's got legitimate weapons. And coming off of that loss to Cincinnati, I really think Baylor comes back home ready to put that loss behind them. UCF's been a quality opponent this year, and it had some big days against bad defenses, but I still don't think they're as talented of a team as Baylor, and I like this spot for the Bears in all honesty. So I'm going to roll with them on a short spread at home, 34-27. This Arizona State-Iowa State game is one we're going to need to wait on injury updates for. At this point, it's become extremely clear that Jordan Tyson is one of the most valuable players in the country. The Arizona State offense has looked incredible in every game this season besides two. The game Leavitt missed, and then the game Jordan Tyson missed, which was last week. He's a massive, massive part of this offense, and a guy who can completely flip this line if he plays. Not to mention this matchup could be golden for him with Iowa State's secondary being so beat up. Iowa State's offense can score, especially at home, but the injuries have really hurt their defense. So until we get that Tyson news, I'm off of this one personally. But for a game pick, as I do pick every game, I'll take Iowa State right now by 3, 27-24. UAB fired Trent Dilfer a couple weeks ago, and they immediately responded by starting West Virginia transfer Ryder Burton at quarterback, and he upset Memphis. That game was a combination of a look-ahead spot for Memphis, as well as an interim head coach boost. But I also think it gives a little bit of reason to believe in this UAB team again. The offense has been up and down all year, but they've got some real playmakers, and I really like what I saw out of Burton. And the defense really stepped up in that Memphis matchup. This UConn team is good, but it's also very offense heavy, and I kind of expect UAB to score quite a bit in this game. It comes down to holding UConn under 40 probably, and I think they do it and hang around just enough to cover. But UConn wins this one at home, 38-28. We've got a Service Academy matchup this week with Army at Air Force. I think Air Force is the better team between these two, and playing at home should be enough of a boost to take this matchup. Service Academy matchups are always so tricky though, but I just love Liam Zarka so far as the leader of this Air Force offense. Army has found their guy themselves, replacing Dwayne Coleman with Cale Helms, and the past 3 weeks have been the best they've played all season. But these teams know each other better than anyone else in the country. Air Force's defensive struggles probably take a bit of a step forward this week, as they know what Army's offense is going to want to do. And I just think that offensive gap between these two teams should be pretty large with how Air Force has looked all year with Zarka. So I'm going to take them at home close, 27-23. Navy at North Texas is the Group of 5 game of the week to me. 2 7-win teams going at it. Navy coming into this one undefeated and rolling offensively, and North Texas responding from the South Florida loss with 109 points scored in the last 2 weeks, including a 600 passing yard day from Drew Mestamaker last week. Neither UTSA or Charlotte are even close to the level of competition Navy presents this week, but still, it's obvious this North Texas offense is insanely good. The issue will be on the other end of the field. Charlotte absolutely fried this North Texas defense in the first half last week, and Navy's got the best rushing attack in the Group of 5 in my opinion. Blake Horvath is an absolute weapon, as is Brandon Chapman, and I see Navy scoring more than enough to hang around, but North Texas being able to survive at home with the better offense, 37-34. This next game is as ugly as it gets this week. Both Buffalo and Bowling Green are absolutely trash this season, both with ugly losses lately. Buffalo just lost to Akron at home, and Bowling Green just lost to Kent State on the road. There's no reason to be betting on a game like this, period, but I pick every game every week, so I've got to do it. And to me, I just have more faith in Buffalo's offense being able to get in a rhythm compared to Bowling Green. At least the major reason they lost is because of 4 interceptions thrown by Taquan Robertson, and while he's not a good quarterback at all, their offense hasn't been god-awful this season as lately as Bowling Green's absolutely has. Just 6 points against CMU at home, and then a loss to Kent State is as bad as it gets. So I'll pick Buffalo here on the road, 24-21. East Carolina is back in action this week on the road at Temple. This game's definitely a tough call, but ECU had 2 weeks of prep for this game, and I know this offense can put up some points and light teams up through the air. I just wonder if that's something Temple's going to be able to stop enough to pull off an upset. They've played great football at home this season, nearly upsetting Navy and taking down UTSA, but the ECU passing attack just brings another challenge, and last week really was not a great showing by this Temple defense at all. ECU's got the number 1 defense in the American right now and a top 3 offense as well. And while Temple's defense has been solid, I also think their numbers against the pass are a bit inflated by playing a very run-heavy schedule. So I'm going to ride with ECU on the road here, 37-28. Next is Louisville and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's offense really only comes on the ground, and Louisville's run defense has been great this year. They completely shut down Miami's rushing attack and got the letdown spot out of the way last week, struggling to fully put away Boston College. They should come ready to play this week, and Virginia Tech is just not a good team whatsoever. They were very lucky to win that game against Cal, let alone cover the spread in overtime. I just think they're going to struggle to stop Louisville's offense, which is a lot more balanced. And on the other end, Louisville eventually puts the clamps on the Hokies to secure a pretty easy road win. I'll go 35-20 for a final score. UNLV New Mexico should be another fireworks show of offense. This UNLV team still cannot stop anything defensively, giving up over 200 yards a week on the ground and over 450 yards per game total. But that offense can absolutely fly, and New Mexico's pass defense has not been good this season whatsoever. On the other end, Jack Lane has been super inconsistent this season, but when he's on, he can light teams up through the air, so I expect him to show up and hang around with this UNLV team on the road. But the amount of playmakers the Rebels have just make it so hard to bet against them at home unless it's Boise State. I'm going to ride with UNLV this week by a touchdown in a shootout, 38-31. Indiana looks to keep rolling through the Big Ten this week as they go on the road to take on Maryland. And while some will definitely think that this is a trap game, I think Indiana could absolutely dominate it. Maryland obviously got off to a great start this season thanks to a very light schedule, and Malik Washington looks like a future star at quarterback. But they're now coming off 3 straight losses and choked away each game to Washington, Nebraska, and UCLA. All 3 of those teams would get the belt from Indiana, obviously, and this is just not a matchup I love for Maryland at all. Indiana's defense is suffocating, and they've got DBs I know that can make big plays if Washington tries to test them. And on the other end, I'm not sure there's a quarterback in a better rhythm than Mendoza right now. I'm taking Indiana this week big, 41-17. Billy Napier is officially out as Florida's head coach, and Florida's first game back is at home against number 5 Georgia. We'll have to see if the interim head coach boost applies to this Florida team. It's a recurring theme in college football where the week after a head coach gets fired, the team comes out to play much more fired up and at least covers the spread. But this Georgia team is very good and is definitely capable of taking this game over in the second half. Florida has had their moments this season where they've looked pretty good though, and the Swamp is still a very tough place to play. This game really comes down to DJ Lagway being able to control the football and not give it away to Georgia for free points. I think Florida can hang around in this game though, so I'll trust the interim boost here, but Georgia should not drop this game still. Give me the Dogs close, 27-23. Boston College found some offense last week and hung around with Louisville on the road, but this week hosting Notre Dame is going to be a whole different beast. They're off a bye week this week after really getting their groove going. They absolutely annihilated Arkansas, blew out Boise State and NC State, and took care of USC, and now get this Boston College team who's looked solid in maybe 2 or 3 games all year long. And I think we can chalk up last week to a letdown spot for Louisville after their Miami win. I mean, this team got blown out by UConn, Clemson, and Pitt. Notre Dame is next to me. I think Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price have a huge day in that backfield. Same goes for the defense, who can really get after a freshman quarterback. I'll go with a 45-13 final for Notre Dame. This Texas Tech-Kansas State game is another one in a tough spot to me right now. Texas Tech backup quarterback Will Hammond is now out for the year after an injury suffered last week after filling in for an injured Baron Morton. So even though it looks like Morton will go this week, his health still could be a problem in this game. Kansas State's playing their best football right now, and it's way different than early on in the year. They nearly upset Baylor on the road, blew out TCU, and then obliterated Kansas on the road last week. Avery Johnson's playing great, the defense is showing up, Jace Brown's taking over, so I trust him to show up at home and find points against a stout Texas Tech defense. The question's going to be how healthy is Morton, because if he's looking good, I think Tech wins this game still. For now, I'll trust it and take Tech close, 31-27. Michigan State at Minnesota is not going to be a pretty game. These two offenses both rank at the bottom of the Big Ten besides Wisconsin, and are both coming off of ugly losses. Michigan State just looking completely uncompetitive offensively against Michigan in their own building in their Super Bowl, and Minnesota getting absolutely blasted by Iowa 41-3. I do feel fairly confident Minnesota can bounce back in this spot though. They've got a much better defense, and I'm not sure Michigan State has any motivation left after last week's loss. And to top it off, their defense is absolutely atrocious. Minnesota should be able to show a pulse on that end this week, as this is not Iowa. They already blew out Nebraska at home a couple weeks ago and just seemed like a different team there. So I'll trust them in a better spot this week, 30-23. Next is Pitt at Stanford. This Pitt team's been such a fun watch lately, mainly because that offense is absolutely explosive. They've been dominating with a freshman quarterback playing out of his mind, and Desmond Reed's a monster at running back. Stanford has shown to be a little competitive, but they've got to be a little beat up after that Miami game, and this Pitt offense can absolutely go. 53 points last week against NC State, 30 plus on the road at Syracuse and Florida State, and 48 the week before against Boston College. It's just an insane stretch of offense. Like I said, Stanford's played better, but I just think this is a game that Pitt can really pull away in again, similar to how Miami did in that second half last week against Stanford. So I'll roll with Pitt to take this one pretty easily, 38-17. The Conference USA is full of toss-up matchups, and Delaware at Liberty is no exception. Liberty has had a terrible season this year, but have remained competitive thanks to a solid defense, and they're coming off a bye week, which can definitely help as they get out of the weekday schedule. But with Delaware, that offense is explosive thanks to a great quarterback in Nick Minicucci. It's their number one offense in the conference, averaging 300 passing yards per game and 30 points per game. Their losses this season have come in tougher matchups where the defense just did not show up, and I think that's definitely possible here. But Liberty's offense hasn't really shown to be all that great, so I think that massive gap could show up here in this game. I like getting Delaware as a road dog in this spot, as long as they don't do dumb stuff at the end of the game like they did last week. Give me Delaware, 28-24. Western Kentucky hosts New Mexico State this week, as both teams also escape the weekday Conference USA chaos. And this is a pretty straightforward pick to me. I don't love New Mexico State's chances on the road here. I said last week when Logan Fife is on, he's had some better games, but he can struggle with turnovers, and last week was a dream matchup for them that they absolutely blew with these turnovers. They lost in overtime despite turning the ball over 5 times throughout that game, and this Western Kentucky offense is miles better than Missouri State's, who will absolutely capitalize off of those mistakes if they're made again. Maverick McIver is banged up, but the backup hasn't looked bad and beat Louisiana Tech on the road last week. Back home, I think this should be a win for the Tops, so I'll take them here by double digits, 31-20. Boise State hosts Fresno State this week, looking for a much better offensive showing, and they could get it here as Fresno State's defense is a bit overrated to me based on their schedule so far. Boise State has the receivers that can exploit this defense better than literally every other team on Fresno State's played so far. Fresno State is starting a sophomore quarterback transfer right now, and they've found absolutely zero offense lately. They just got shut out by San Diego State last week at home, and now face a defense that I think even higher of. These DBs are ball hawks and can make a young quarterback pay several times throughout a game, especially when his weapons are just not helping him at all. So I think Boise State just pulls away in the second half of this game, dominating defensively, which gets the offense cooking, 35-13. ULM is on their third-string quarterback right now and generally may have the worst offense in America. If it wasn't for the rushing attack being solid early on, they'd rank at the absolute bottom of the country in yards. The last 4 weeks, this team has been completely uncompetitive, both home and away, and the only remotely decent game they've played this season is a home win over Arkansas State, which looks like a complete outlier. This defense has shown up here and there, but they've gotten crushed lately, and this Old Dominion offense is just as good, if not better, than everyone they've seen besides Alabama. And I know for a fact ULM cannot match their production, so I'm taking Colton Joseph and Old Dominion on the road in a blowout this week, 37-17. This Louisiana-South Alabama game is a complete toss-up to me. Neither team is trustworthy at all. On the South Alabama side, I know that defense is horrendous, but the offense has shown up in some games and had some big days. And on the other side, Louisiana's offense was god-awful early in the season with absolutely zero passing game. But they finally settled on Lunch Winfield at quarterback, and although he's still bad, the passing game has at least been there a little bit. And he can make plays with his legs that's helped them find the offense. And this Louisiana defense is somewhat competitive. They held Southern Miss to just 22 and James Madison to 24. So I think this game isn't going to be a complete shootout either. But at home, I do think South Alabama scores. I just don't think that defense can stop anyone. So I'll take South Alabama by just 3, 31-28. Virginia at Cal could be a decent game, but probably a bit lower scoring in my opinion. The main reason being the fact that Cal has a pretty strong linebacker core that can defend the run. And Virginia's offense has been inconsistent thanks to quarterback play that's been super turnover happy. But they just got a great stable of backs led by Jamari Taylor, who should see a healthy dosage of carries in this game. But coming off a near loss to North Carolina last week, I think this team's going to be a lot more ready this time around, knowing they can't play that poorly again. I've said so many times I really like JKS. Some of the throws he's made this year have been next level, but his receiving core is terrible, and this team cannot be trusted in my opinion. Virginia's been better all year outside of 1 week, so I'll take them to make that cross-country trip and pick up another win, 30-20. Mississippi State is coming off back-to-back heartbreaking losses, falling just short to Florida, throwing a pick down 2 in Florida territory with 30 seconds left. and then at home collapsing and blowing a huge second half lead to Texas and losing in overtime. I think it's very safe to say this Mississippi State team is super competitive and can hang around with most of the SEC, but they just are not there yet in terms of finishing games and getting over that hump. This is a great week to bounce back, though, against an Arkansas team in a similar boat. They nearly upset Tennessee and Texas A&M and then got their opportunity against Auburn and blew that last week as well. Something's got to give in this game, and I really wouldn't trust either as a favorite, as I think it goes down to the final plays. So I'll lean Arkansas at home by just a field goal, 33-30. Kansas-Oklahoma State is the game I really want no part of. This Oklahoma State team is a dumpster fire, but the Kansas defense has been pretty awful this season, giving up 400 yards a game and half of that coming on the ground. That's literally the one thing Oklahoma State hasn't been absolutely awful at, so I don't really see them getting completely shut out like Texas Tech did to them last week. Kansas's defense, especially the defensive line, just does not compete with that Tech team at all. But on the other end, Jalen Daniels should not be stopped very much. Oklahoma State's defense has been gashed all year long and cannot stop the pass. I think Daniels gets going through the air a bit rather than being super run-heavy this week, but it won't matter regardless, as Kansas is not going to lose this game. I'll go 41-20 for a final. Over to the MAC, we've got a huge in-state rival game between Central and Western Michigan. Both teams have been inconsistent this season, but Central Michigan's rushing attack is so hard for MAC teams to stop this season. Western Michigan's defense has been pretty good this year, but offensively just have not looked overly competitive outside of the Ball State game this year. Just 21 points on UMass and 17 last week against Miami, Ohio is not going to get it done in the MAC. However, both games were on the road, and they've looked a lot different at home. But like I said, this is a rivalry game with a ton on the line. I think we see a very competitive game on both sides here, and I'll trust Western at home to get the win, but by just a field goal, 24-21. Trinidad Chambliss and the Ole Miss Rebels are back home this week taking on South Carolina, and for this one, I really don't care what South Carolina did against Alabama last week. They still lost, and that was the majority of the season they had left. They've got to be pretty down after dropping a game that big in that fashion, and now they go on the road against one of the best offenses in the country that still hasn't been slowed down. Trinidad Chambliss has continued to establish himself as a Heisman contender. I love Kawan Lacey in the backfield, and this receiving core is absolutely elite around Chambliss. Not to mention the spot is pretty perfect to me with South Carolina's situation. So I'm rocking with Trinidad and the Rebels again this week, 34-17. Michigan is back at home this week after taking down Michigan State with a big second half, and they'll host a Purdue team coming off a home loss to Rutgers. The quarterback play at Purdue has just been so bad lately. 24 points against the worst defense in the Big Ten is not impressive at all, and they scored 0 on the road against Northwestern the week prior. This is just not an offense I see scoring much on an elite run defense at Michigan, and although they've given up some big plays and got torched by USC, I know this pass defense can make plays and lock down lesser receivers. On the other end, Michigan's rushing attack remains elite and deep, and Bryce Underwood has looked outstanding in home games this season. Purdue's defense is second worst in the conference, and I just don't think this game is going to be too competitive for that long. Give me Michigan big, 38-13. Next is Arizona at Colorado. This is not a super tough matchup for the Buffs compared to Utah last week, but still one they should struggle with. Arizona's corners are good, and Colorado cannot really run the football and relies on the passing game to get going to keep them in games. We saw last week what they look like against a quality defense that can defend the pass, and it was an absolute massacre against Utah. This is a home game, which should help them come to play a lot more, but I still just don't love this matchup, and after another loss that bad, I don't really want to be taking this Colorado team against decent opponents with quarterbacks that I trust to score points on them. Noah Fafita can make some plays and keep Arizona's offense moving all game long, and I just don't trust Colorado to do the same. Give me Arizona by a touchdown, 31-24. Now over to the Mountain West, we've got Wyoming at San Diego State. This Aztec defense is spectacular, and so is Wyoming's, but just not to the same level in my opinion. And there is definitely a gap between these two offenses. Caden Anderson has made some wow throws for Wyoming this year, but that offense isn't great around him, and San Diego State has a lot of speed and some solid weapons around Jaden Denigal that's helped him put up some points this year. And the staff is pretty great from an offensive perspective as well. Sean Lewis doing a great job there so far, so I think San Diego State will win this game at home. But I think Wyoming's defense and Caden Anderson's playmaking ability at least allows them to compete a little bit. I'll go 28-20 for a final score. Georgia Tech at NC State should be a really fun game of offense. As we continue to see with this Georgia Tech team, they're the real deal, especially offensively. Haynes King and company have been virtually unstoppable this season, and we know NC State can't stop a cold with their defense. Even going on the road, this should be a cakewalk for the Georgia Tech offense. But on the other end, I'd be surprised if NC State didn't put up 20 plus in this game, maybe even close to 30. CJ Bailey can have some huge performances, and this Georgia Tech defense isn't their strong suit at all. They've got some quality players, but NC State can score, and I like this matchup for them. Their own defense is just going to continue to cost them. So I'm going to take Tech by double digits, 38-28. Over to Oklahoma at Tennessee. This is maybe the matchup of the week. Oklahoma's been struggling a bit lately with Mateer coming off that injury and could really use a win here. But this Tennessee team is absolutely rolling offensively. It's one of the highest scoring offenses in the country, and they just dropped 56 on Kentucky on the road. So I trust Tennessee's offense, especially their weapons, even against an incredible defensive front like Oklahoma's. I just think they still have an edge. Neyland Stadium is such a tough place to play at, especially at night, and I just don't love the Sooner offense right now. They aren't running the ball very well, and Mateer's been really hit or miss. So give me Tennessee to edge out Oklahoma at home this week, 30-23. USC at Nebraska could be a sneaky good game this week, but it all depends on how Nebraska shows up for this game. Occasionally this season, especially on the road, this offense has looked absolutely atrocious. The offensive line's been awful, and Raiola has taken a ton of sacks this year, but they always seem to hang around in big games like this, especially at home. It's a night game, and Nebraska's fan base should have that building rocking, making things a bit tougher on USC. But Jaden Mayava has some lethal weapons at his disposal that are absolutely going to come through for him in this game, no matter how good Nebraska's defense plays. And this is just not a game I really see USC losing late, as Nebraska has not gained my trust at all. So although I think it can be closer, I'm going to take USC on the road to survive, 30-21. Auburn finally picked up a win last week on the road at Arkansas after making a quarterback change to go with Ashton Daniels while down 21-10, and he helped lead the comeback, although he didn't do that much, and it was mainly Arkansas just giving the ball away every single possession to the Auburn defense. But nonetheless, the change was made and it provided a spark to the team. But I will say I am not a fan of Ashton Daniels at all as a passer, and I really don't think he'll provide that much of a boost to this team. Arnold was terrible, but until I see Ashton Daniels carve up a defense through the air, I don't think he's going to blow teams away. Kentucky got absolutely thrashed last week by Tennessee, but that's one of the best offenses in the country, and this Auburn offense is pretty much the bottom of the SEC. I think they lean on the ground game, and Kentucky gets enough stops to hang around, but I'll take Auburn at home to win the game, 28-20. Washington State has looked so much better lately, now 3 straight weeks where they've looked like a different team. They almost upset Ole Miss on the road, almost upset Virginia on the road, and then took Toledo to the woodshed last week at home. This Oregon State team is a rival now, but they're a god-awful team this season with no FBS wins on the season. The lone win on the schedule coming last week against Lafayette. I'm not going to sit here and think that gives them a ton of momentum when I just watched Washington State play very good football lately. I think Zevi Eckhouse continues to play good football, and this Washington State defense is stout enough again to grab a road win this week as just the better team overall, 31-23. Next is Wake Forest at Florida State. This Florida State team has completely lost my trust and faith. They haven't won a game in what feels like forever now, and they've completely fallen off on both ends. Tommy Castellanos had looked the same as he did last year with decision making, and the program is in a pretty rough spot right now with so much uncertainty surrounding Norville's future. This is not a spot I love them in as near double-digit favorites. Wake Forest has continued to be competitive thanks to the running game and some outstanding defensive play lately. Beating SMU surprised me, and regardless of your opinions on SMU, it's just an impressive win as they held them to just 12 points a week after hanging 30 on Clemson. I'm going to trust Wake to be competitive yet again this week against an FSU team in limbo, but FSU finally gets a much-needed win. I'll go 30-27 for a final. Troy's been pretty much a wagon this year. Tucker Kilcrease's been solid this year at quarterback, and they've got pretty good weapons. Not to mention a genuinely solid defense that's second in the Sun Belt this season. The run defense has not been good, but the pass defense is incredibly strong, and that's exactly where this matchup sways for me. Arkansas State's offense relies a lot on Jalen Raynor to be able to throw the ball down the field. They average 250 passing yards a game, and he's also rushed for over 300 yards on the season. I think Troy's going to be able to put pressure on him against a weak offensive line and clamp up on those receivers to really slow down this Arkansas State offense enough to cover this spread. And I know Troy can score on the other end, so I'll roll with them at home, 34-24. Utah absolutely destroyed Colorado last week, as did Cincinnati with Baylor, and they'll face off this week under the lights in Salt Lake City. This should be a great game in my opinion. Utah has a really solid defense and a dominant O-line that's been great in every game this year besides Texas Tech one. But Cincinnati presents some real challenges to me. They've got an incredible offense led by Brendan Sorsby, and they've scored a ton of points all year. They haven't seen a defense like Utah's yet, but I still don't think Utah is that much better than the Cincinnati team. The defense has been good, and Sorsby's a legitimate playmaker at quarterback and will keep Cincinnati hanging around this game in my opinion. But they just aren't the same level of talent as Texas Tech or BYU to me, which is why I've got the Utes by a touchdown, 31-24. The last game of the week, per usual, is a Hawaii game, this time on the road at San Jose State. And while this game is definitely a toss-up, I lean towards Hawaii as the better team in this game. Timmy Chang has the Rainbow Warriors rolling, and they've shown up on the road this season. They beat Air Force and Colorado State on the road, and San Jose State's defense is just as bad, especially through the air, which is Hawaii's bread and butter. Mike Alejado is healthy and ripping defenses for 300 yards a game, and surprisingly, Hawaii's defense has been extremely solid this year. third in the Mountain West overall and giving up under 200 passing yards a game, which is also the strong suit of that San Jose State offense. Again, this matchup's a toss-up, but I like the advantages Hawaii has statistically, not to mention coming off a bye week, and I just trust that coaching staff as a road dog. So I'll go 33-28 for a final. That's it for my Week 10 picks. Let me know your thoughts on any of these games down in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
BARK Radio.